everyone. A very good evening to everybody and welcome to the webinar today. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Anumeha Sinha. Anumeha is a leadership development coach and facilitator with over 1,700 coaching hours, partnering with leaders across geographies to navigate career transitions, build high-performing teams, and strengthen leadership presence. With nearly 2 decades of experience as an HR professional, she has worked with leading global organizations including RBS, McKinsey and Company, and EY India, contributing to people, leadership, talent, and cultural initiatives across India, the United States, and the United Kingdom. In addition to her coaching practice, Anumeha serves as an adjunct coach faculty and mentor, supporting the development of coaches and contributing to the growth of the coaching profession. She is also certified in Theory U from Presenting Institute of at MIT, bringing valuable insight into leadership transformation and systems change. Today, Anumeha will guide us through an engaging conversation on active listening. Thank you, Anumeha, for being here, and over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Aditi. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and I don't know what locations are you joining in. But it will always be good to see the names and faces together. Probably this is my only opportunity to see all of you. So if it is not too much of a problem, I'll request you to be on the camera. And because this is a group of coaches, right? And we are talking about active listening. What we are going to do today is not so much so of talking about the competency. We are going to do a lot of self-reflection exercise. And before we kind of launch the session or start our conversation, I'm curious to know what are your expectations from the session today? What are you looking forward for? And you can just send it in the chat. Or you can unmute yourself and just share. Okay, contextual listening. Okay, Krish. We'll talk a little bit about that. And I'm curious to know what would contextual mean for you, but we'll come to it a little later. What are you expecting from the session today, the others?
So I'm not sure about everybody else, but I would want to know what active in the listening part means. Like, what does the active part signify?
Sure. Thanks, Aditi. Okay, so what does active really mean? Deepen my listening skills. Okay, sure. And so let me just begin as I'm insights on focus on listening. Absolutely, Devlin, we'll talk about that. Anybody else? Challenges in active listening. Yeah, Adir will talk about that as well. Understand how to focus on recap what we have heard. Sure, Anuga. So we will practically be touching upon all these, and if there are any questions, feel free to just raise your hands and then ask the question in the conversation, because this is just a interactive session. Complete presence in a conversation. How do we really know we are listening actively? Yes, Chris. Okay. So let me start, and it's a pleasure to be here amongst the group of coaches in this room. It's my absolute pleasure. And as I was reflecting on today's topic, I found myself coming back to a very simple thought that as coaches, if you remember, we do 80-20 principle, and 80% is what we are doing in the session is listening. So the time that we spend mostly in any conversation is around listening, right? Listening to understand, listening to notice pattern, listening for meanings, and listening for what is yet to emerge. And yet, despite spending so much of our time listening, many of us will spend a lot of energy asking for refining our questions or learning new coaching models and tools, right? And clients may not remember every question we have asked, but they often remember how they felt in our presence. They remember feeling seen, understood. Even if we are challenging, are they being challenged with care and given the space to hear themselves more clearly? And in many ways, our listening creates the condition in which a powerful question can do their work, right? So even if you are asking a powerful question, and if you're not listening fully to what is going to emerge, it may not work. So in today's session, we are not learning about any new technique for listening. The session today is focused and it's an invitation to pause and examine our own practices, right? So how do we listen? What are we listening for? What are we noticing in a conversation? Or what might we be missing? Yeah, that's how can we listen in ways that create even greater awareness, trust, and transformation for our client. Okay. So I'd like to start with a very simple question. And not because there's a right or a wrong question, but if you think about our most recent coaching conversations that felt meaningful to you, when your client was speaking, what naturally captured your attention? And take a moment to notice your instinctive response. Usually, whenever we are in a coaching, and what we will do is we will, if you have pen and paper with you, please try and write the answers on a pen and paper, because what we will do is we will continue to write the answers, and then towards the end we'll see if we have time, we will try and go in a breakout room. Okay, so when your client is speaking, what naturally captures your attention first? And you can share the response in the chat. Let me also read through it. Emotions and intentions, sure. Okay, Krish, what else? Non-verbal cue, okay. Silence, sure. Yes, Anup. The energy, all right. These are the things that are these things the ones that we are instinctively focusing first or most? Okay. Body language, energy, expression, emotions, tone. Okay. Choice of words. Yeah. I was waiting for the words because that's the first thing that happens. What is being said and how they are being said. Words that they are using. Absolutely. Absolutely. So when we are listening in any conversation, the first thing our mind, because our brain is a meaning making machine always, so the brain always looks for the facts or the story. But as coaches, we are also always focusing on the emotions patterns. Are there any beliefs which are emerging, and are the beliefs limiting, right? Goal, energy shift, something else. There could be a lot of things that may emerge in a conversation. Yeah. And I'm inviting Krish, because you wrote intentions. Would you like to talk a little bit more around intentions? How do you notice a client's intention? You're on mute, Krish.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay, gotta forgive me. It's almost 9 plus in the evening. I'm a bit tired, long day work.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you for joining still. Yeah.
yeah, I wanted to. Intentions basically is expressed not only in words, but also through the body language, through all the movements. I think I've seen a lot of that in terms of movements, gestures, energy, tone,
Hmm.
because that intention can be expressed and displayed through non-verbal cues,
Hmm.
more often than not. Because somebody comes in and who's very trouble, you don't need to ask, are you trouble or not?
Hmm.
You can see it. It's pretty visible. That's
Yeah.
how I would interpret that.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, just one caveat. At how soon do you notice the intention of a person when they come into a coaching conversation is also an important aspect,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
somebody comes in a coaching conversation and they bring in a certain kind of energy. If my
Mm.
mind has interpreted that as being troubled, so that's my interpretation of their intention, which may or may not be correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we need
Correct.
to
Yeah.
be careful about it. The
Yeah.
best we can do and we should do is, if we are noticing something, we reflect it back to the client and inquire around it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there is no correct answer towards it in terms of, but you notice there are interesting things. There's no, every person in this room has shared something. Somebody is noticing the energy, somebody is
Mm.
noticing the tone, somebody is noticing the shift,
Mm.
somebody is noticing the silence, right? So, in fact, the diversity of response in this room is one of our strengths as coaches. but it also reveals something very important. We all do not listen in the same way. And our attention is naturally drawn to a certain signal and away from other things, right? And that raises an interesting question that if our attention is selective, what else might be present in the conversation that we are not noticing, isn't it? And I'm inviting a response from people. What do you think around it?
Yeah, Anumeha, may I come in here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Adil.
Yeah, so yeah, I listen not only to the energy and the emotion and the tonality, but I also observe the patterns, as you said,
Yeah,
the shift in energy, the shift in energy, the shift in gestures and body language, because
yeah,
that also conveys some message.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And
I'm
yeah, go ahead, complete your thought,
I'm
Adil.
also a little curious to learn about limiting beliefs, which I saw on the screen.
Hmm.
How do I actually listen to the limiting belief of the
Hmm.
person?
Sure, sure. And we will come to it in a bit, Adir, but if your question still remains unanswered, please stop me and ask it again towards the end of the conversation, but we'll talk a little bit around it. Yes, Anup.
Yeah, yeah, I have noticed that there is, like you said, there are certain cues which I am able to pick up faster, or I naturally look at that.
Yeah, yeah,
And probably once the conversation has gone forward, then I realize that I might have missed other cues. But and as you rightly said, there could be a lot of opportunities, times when I'm actually have not read many of those. But it
yeah,
maybe
yeah,
towards the end of the conversation of an hour or 30 minutes, whatever we are taking, that's when
yeah.
you realize there's something that you missed.
Yes, absolutely. And that happens with all of us. We are naturally picking up certain things more intuitively. And in the process of doing that, are we missing? And that's a question for us to reflect. It's not necessary everyone will have the same answer, but are we missing around certain cues that the client is bringing? Right? And imagine everything that your client says is just the visible tip of the surface. The fact, the event, the challenges, these are all important, but they are only a part of the entire story. And beneath the surface, there's a lot that drives what's on the top of the surface. And I'll just bring up my slide. But as coaches, our work just isn't to hear the story; it's also to listen for the person behind that story. Yeah. And I used to do that very often. When I started my ACC journey, I was so caught in the story that I would miss what's beneath the surface. Okay. Uh, Let me bring my slide up. Are you able to see my slide?
Yes.
Okay. Uh, so what we can see here in the conversation, and of course our words, tonality, gesture, body language, these are some things that we observe, right? But what lies beneath the surface is the values, beliefs, identity, experience, feeling, fear, all of that. When your client is sharing something, am I just listening for the words? Or am I able to inquire things that are beneath the surface? And if we really have to bring the impact and shift for the client, we work something which is beneath the surface, which leads to the change in what is above the surface in the form of actions, reactions, their commitment to change. Yeah. I'm now asking a second question to all of you. And this is a reflective question. During a coaching, where does your mind most often drifts? Right? All of us drift during the conversation. Where does your mind most often drift? And this is a reflection for all of you. Feel free to share it in the chat, but also write the response in the diary because it is also to understand our own patterns over a period of time. So I'm just allowing you guys to have a minute to answer this. Okay. Okay, emphasis, pace of speaking. Okay, but similar personal experience. The client achieving coaching session objective. Yeah, Kiran, absolutely. Formulating thoughts and questions. Thank you, Chris, for being so candid. Yeah. First thought it, what would I do in that situation? Absolutely. Internal distractions. Mind drifts to similarities in other life situation towards my thoughts and experience in my own thoughts. Yeah. Yes, Kalpana. Making assessment of the situation. Mind drifts to listen to the response rather than comprehend. Okay. Sharing solutions, right? Um, Similar experience that I may have. Internal solutioning. Yeah. Yeah. So, if we say we don't drift in a coaching conversation, 90% of the time we are not true or we are not aware enough if we say that, right? Our mind always drift during the coaching conversation. Either we are crafting the next question or we are looking for a pattern or we are solving the client's problem in our mind and then leading the conversation towards that solution. And let me tell you, I learned some of the models, coaching models, some of the frameworks, and I would recall which framework should I fit in to this particular solution. So that is where my mind used to drift a lot of times. And relating to my own experience. And when I work with coaches, one thing I hear in a lot of mentoring connect and also during the class is that everything that my client is bringing, either I am going through it now or I have gone through it recently. And that is where my mind goes. Or you can stay completely with the client. And the last one is very, very difficult and takes a lot of practice, intentional practice to arrive there. But everything that's happening before that, crafting the next question, getting caught up in my own, stories or in my own experience or solutioning, everything is very, very normal as we are trying to become the coach, right? And the practice isn't in the perfection. The practice is how soon do we notice and how soon we return our attention. And that muscle we'll have to strengthen as we spend more and more and more time. But when we talk about crafting the next question, looking for patterns, solving the client problem, my invitation for all of you is that how could you get absolutely comfortable in the space of not knowing? Yeah. Is it okay for me to not know anything about what my client is sharing and not relate that to my own ego? And the more you are comfortable that's the richest space in any coaching conversation. Your comfort in the space of not knowing increases your curiosity, right? Because I don't know what is the right solution. I am with the client moment to moment. And the moment you bring in that curiosity and suspend the need to frame the next question in the mind, you will see beautiful things happening in a coaching conversation, right? And suspending the need to form the next question, I am just inviting people to think about how are you dealing with it? Would anybody want to share? How do you deal when you have the need to suspend forming the next coaching conversation? Any tips?
Yeah. May I?
Yes, Adir.
Yeah. So there's a challenge for me, but I try to practice the mindfulness. I try to forget the entire world and immerse myself in the conversation and by observing what the client is saying and be present. That's what I try and practice. It's
Yeah,
not that
yeah,
easy, but I try.
yeah, absolutely. Just being present to what the client is sharing. Yes, Anaga.
So for me, I sometimes the challenge is that the client has been saying so many things, and I'm trying to catch on to hearing, listening to everything that the client is saying. But then I've realized that it's okay if I miss a particular point. Let me
Yeah,
be present into what the client is saying now. It makes
absolutely.
me feel a little guilty, but then I've learned to cope with it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Let's miss out on the story, if I may say so. If that's not the best way to put it across. But as coaches, am I able to shine the spotlight on the client and not get caught in their story? So the moment we are getting into the story, we are shining the spotlight on their problem. But can we shine the spotlight on our client always? Which means that I'm just focusing on who they are being while they are dealing that problem. Yeah. Um, And yeah, absolutely, Mandar. Trying to be curious. The more curious you are, the more your need to ask that keep the next question ready will actually get suspended. Because what happens is just focus on what the client is sharing, or your next question should come from what your client just shared, the last thing that they shared. Can you pick up a question? It's like a, dance of two. One person completes the step and the second person picks it up from there. And if you have missed something important earlier when the client was sharing, let that go. Just let that go and trust the process that if it is important for your client, they will bring it
You'll
up
bring it
again.
back. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, Davleen and then Anup. Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to just say that because this was one problem that I used to face a lot, because
Yeah.
I would in my mind somewhere think, okay, no, that sounds important. That sounds important. That sounds important. So my mind was taxed by the thought of keeping everything in my mind alive so that my next question is more relevant. And over the years and coaching conversations, I've realized that I am no one to think about what is important.
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
not me.
Yes,
It's them.
it's about them. Yeah.
That's one thing.
Yeah.
And like you said, it was the last thing that they said is where maybe the question is.
Yeah.
And beautifully, if my question is about something which is not important to them, they will
Yeah.
let me know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Your client
They will
will
say,
tell.
no. They're like, no. I don't
Yeah.
want, no. This. Then you're like, okay, fine. So that really helped me ease away from the urge to markers like, oh, important. I was like, everything is just okay. They
Yeah.
are talking right now. Let them
Yes.
speak.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that really helped me stay in the moment.
Yeah, we are absolutely in service of the client, and how beautifully you've put, Davleen, that it's not about me, right? I don't want the spotlight on the problem of the client, but neither do I want the spotlight on me. The spotlight should be on the client, right? So it's about them, and just let's just hear. And if there's something that I have missed out, which client was sharing earlier, if it is important, trust the process. They'll bring it up again for us in the conversation. Yeah. Thank you.
So it
Anup,
takes away.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
it takes away. It takes away from our need to mark what is important.
Absolutely.
Because that comes from us again.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you.
And it's not our place to do that choice. Make that choice for the client, what is important for them.
Yes.
Remember, whatever choices they make, they live the consequences. So we are no one to make that choice for our client.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
we will let them, we continue to pass the choice back to them. Let them choose and let them work with that. Yes, Anup, I saw you raised your hands earlier.
I try to consciously try to block out any of these frameworks which are there. This frameworks is something which makes me go into the next question mode. So
yeah,
I'm not sure how I've been completely affected, but I make a conscious effort to block out. It need not follow. At least trusting in the process, as you rightly said, and knowing that yes, we have done this, and so the process will naturally unfold rather than putting a framework in place. So that's how I try to put it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is not just the framework. Sometimes, you will see PDFs doing the round, 50 best coaching question, most powerful coaching questions. If you've read that, your mind is also hooked to those questions. Where do I use this question? And in the process, your client shared something and you missed out completely. Right? So being present in the moment becomes, very, very important. And in many ways, coaching isn't just about helping the client tell a better story. It is about helping them discover the deeper meaning beneath the story that they are telling. And always, always remember, you will notice that the client's words are often the invitation to explore something, but they are rarely the destination. They start with that. It's an invitation for us. If you're fully present, we will explore that, but that's not the destination. When you go deeper, there are layers that gets unpeeled in the coaching conversation. Yeah. So, as you just reflected, our minds tend to drift while listening. And that made me realize something important, that listening isn't just a single act. There's a lot happening during the conversation, and there are multiple channels working at the same time. right? So let's talk about the different channels, and I've named them as 4 channels of listening, and let's talk about one of them one by one. The first one is listening to the client. Yeah, the first thing and the most obvious thing is listening to the client. Okay. uh, this includes the words that they are sharing and words they are choosing to share, right? The facts that they share, the emotions that they express, their tone of voice, the metaphors if they use, and even the pauses that they take, right? But it also means listening beneath the narrative. We ask ourselves, what meaning is the client making of that experience? What values or beliefs are shaping the story they are telling? And in many ways, this very closely aligns with the ICF invitation to hear not just what is said, but what is not said. Okay. And this is where somebody asks, how do we catch the limiting belief? When your client is sharing a story, just listen carefully. Are they taking pauses at certain places? Are they sharing certain things repeatedly? Yeah. Yes, Moina, I missed, what do you want me to repeat?
No, the last point that you spoke about in terms of, catching those limiting beliefs once again,
Yes.
can you?
So when you hear a fact, so what happens is the values and beliefs are different. Values are like their internal compass, and that decides who they like more, what decisions are they making, how they show up in the world. But belief is sometimes formed around that values, or beliefs are formed around the experiences that they have lived. Okay. And when you hear them in your client's world, that belief is absolute truth because they have lived that belief multiple times. It starts with in a form of a story, and then it gets reinforced so many times that it becomes their absolute truth. But we as coaches know that what the client is sharing could be an assumption or could be a way they are looking at things. And I'll give you an example. For example, my value could be honesty, and I will choose honesty in everything that I do. But I tried being honest in a feedback conversation and the person didn't take well. So I formed a story that, every honest conversation may not go well. And if it happens to me 2 or 3 times more, I have reinforced that story so much that it now becomes a belief. So the next time when you hear your client share that, I have a problem sharing feedback with my team, because if I share very honest feedback, sharing honest feedback does not work. Now, that is an absolute truth in their world, but it is actually, when we are looking as a third person, it's a belief that they are carrying. And honestly speaking, just checking with them, how do what I hear is a belief. Rather than saying that, just checking with them as you're sharing this, what are some of the beliefs or what are some of the values that are showing up? What you just shared, how much of that is factual? So we are helping the client investigate that belief. And I usually always recommend, and in my coaching practice, I never use a adjective to anything. So if it is a belief, I would say it's a belief. I would not say if it is a limiting belief or an empowering belief. Because if I do that, it's my interpretation of their world. And sometimes the clients, take that as a recommendation that it's a limiting. Let them investigate and see whether it's a limiting belief for them or not. Are you guys with me so far? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, just keeping the video off. I have a very poor internet connection.
No problem. No problem, Kalpana. No problem. I have a question for all of you, and this is something that you don't have to write in the chat, but this is as we are trying to do a little more investigation in our own coaching style. Just take a minute to reflect on this. What do you consistently hear in your client? What do you suspect you sometimes miss? As you reflect on your recent coaching conversation, what do you naturally tune into? And while you're naturally tuning into certain things, what might you be overlooking? As you have written the response, just show of thumbs up, and then I know. Okay, I see. Okay, Anaga has written. So people behind the closed cameras, are you guys with me so far? Are you listening? Are you reflecting?
We
Yes,
are,
okay,
we
Devin.
are.
Okay, Moina. All right. Should we talk about the second channel? So one is listening to the client. What is the second thing that we listen for in the coaching conversation? Okay, let me ask you. Um, how many parties are there in a coaching conversation? What all is involved? Okay, so one is of course your client. What's the second party? So one is a client. Second one is us as coaches, right? The client and the coach.
The coach and the coach's world, the coach's
Yeah.
thoughts,
Yeah.
their
Yes.
beliefs, their
Yes.
values.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Yes, Dublin. And Manu, there is a client and there is self, which is us as coaches. And there's something very powerful between the two of us. And that is the sacred space that we have created for a conversation. Right? So when we are listening to different channels, the first channel, as I said, was listening to the client. The second channel is listening to yourself. And that sometimes most overlooks. Are we listening to ourselves? While the client is speaking, what is happening inside of us? Are we already thinking of the next question? Or are we silently agreeing and disagreeing to what the client is sharing? Right? Are we feeling excited, impatient, protective? Remember, our internal reaction aren't necessarily distractions. They can be useful data. The data is to notice them and without allowing them to take over the conversation. So we do not, so as we talk about our client, we are listening to the whole person. Whole person not just means that the words said, unsaid, their emotions, their feelings, but also the context that they bring into the conversation. Also the system that they are a part of. There are multiple systems at play. They are a part of an education system. They are a part of a family system. They are a part of a geographical region. All of them that shapes in who they are being. But remember, like our client, we also are part of a system. And am I first being aware of my system? One. The second is, am I ensuring that my system is not interfering in who my client is being? Right? If we are feeling, triggered by what my client is sharing, there definitely needs to be an investigation to what's happening to us. Yeah. Yes, Manu.
Yeah. So how do you personify this? Because you said that's the third act. How do you personify the ones
The
that are?
space.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll just talk about the space after this, Manu. Immediately after this. So we'll talk about the space. But absolutely, in terms of us, are we aware of who we are being? And therefore, it is said, and if you look at the competency around building the coaching mindset or the present, there is always some work that needs to happen for us before we get into a coaching conversation. That's our preparation. Then we are absolutely working during a coaching conversation. But then a huge amount of work should also go in post reflection. And that is where we understand more and more. And as you start having more peer conversations, as you start the coaching journey, you will learn a lot of things about your own self, our own system. So, are we ensuring that we are not allowing that to interfere in who we are being? Yeah. The worldview, the culture, the social, yeah, absolutely, Krish. Yeah, organizational context, everything. Or working with somebody who just moved from a PSU to a corporate culture where multiple levels were not there, the person felt very, very difficult because the person was used to that authority, right? And we need to understand the context that they are coming in from. Pause here, and I'm asking a question where I invite you to write your answers here. Okay, when your client is speaking, what is the loudest voice in your own mind? And how might it be shaping the way you listen? Okay. Just take a minute and write the response to it. What's the loudest voice? Tears. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes the strong emotions show up in the form of tears. And are we comfortable with that? Mental distractions. Okay. Silence. Okay, silence. What about silence? I'm curious. Manu and then Davleen.
Yeah, it's when the client might just go into a mute mode,
Yeah.
and you are in a dilemma whether to proceed or
Hmm.
take a pause.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that silence can be a bit, for lack of a better word, deafening.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's for us to then investigate also, Manu, a little bit around what's happening to me as a coach in this moment of silence. So while there's something emerging for the client, right, in that
Mm.
space, when they are silent, they are thinking, they are going in the depth of the thoughts, right? But what's happening with me as a coach in that silence?
Sure.
And sometimes, and I am sharing my own personal experience, this dilemma of whether to ask the next question or allow the silence was also because, should I ensure that the objective or the outcome that was set up is achieved? So should I just hurry towards that outcome or should I just allow the silence to happen? Yeah.
Sure.
So that happens. Yes, Davleen. Thank you, Manu.
Yeah. So adding on to what you said, that should I allow the silence to happen or should I ask the next question?
Yeah.
It's taken practice, of course, but
Yeah.
I find that is why I said that the loudest sound is silence for me in a coaching conversation, because I have it's taken a lot of practice and a lot of settling down for me as a coach to not fill in the silence and let it stay.
Yeah.
Let it stay. Let it stay till the time the person in front, the client, starts to speak.
Yeah.
And they sometimes might just say, now what?
Yeah.
And the loudest silence, I think, is when that follows the word that the phrase that says, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you just let that be, I mean, I've seen that for myself. When I've let that phrase followed by a silence that they and me both maintained or held.
Yeah.
It's loud, and then it is followed often by something like, you don't understand.
Yeah.
So hence the loudest is the silence.
Yeah. And it's one of the most powerful tools that we have as coaches. And
absolutely.
The need to form the next question can be suspended because we are aware that we have silence at our rescue. So if you're worried about what should I be asking next, just allow that silence. Let the client share, and then you can form the question in the mind. And in the process, you are allowing the silence. And you will notice many times that the client is sharing something and suddenly they go quiet. And they go quiet for certain seconds. If we allow that to happen, they are actually dipping into something which is very deep for them.
Yes.
And then they bring up something, and most of the beautiful awareness created for the client happens during the moment of silence. And as coaches, while we are partnering with them in this journey, our way of, one role also that we need to play is that we need to continuously get out of their way, right? Our need to drive them towards the outcome and all. Let them choose the pace. Let them, in some conversations, if they would want to, go slow, honor that. Yeah, because we are always in service of our client. So while I respect that there is a need for us to define outcome and take them to the outcome, at the end of the day, it's one human talking to another, and that humanness should shine in a conversation. Yeah. Yes, Anup.
I have seen a couple of times that while silence definitely helps us give that space, and it is at that time when you feel that you should ask the next question, and that means you feel okay. It is exactly that time when the client suddenly starts talking again. So you have created the silence, and you feel that the client is now done, and now we are moving on. And when you have that And then giving some more time, I've seen multiple occasions, they suddenly start reflecting more deeper into that.
Absolutely. And the question that I formed during that silence may not be relevant in what my
Absolutely.
client just shared,
Correct.
right? And therefore, and you know, our brain is also looking for evidences to pick up a new behavior. So Manu, when you know when the silence becomes difficult, allow that silence and see what emerges for the client. And the more you see the evidence of deep insights coming in that moment, the more you will understand and the more you will be comfortable with that silence over a period of time.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. How do we handle a situation where sometimes me as a coach go silent after the client has shared something? I am processing and I'm lost about what should I be asking next. How does the client process the silence? So, well, this is a, you know, conversation that's happening in our mind, Rahul, right? But our clients don't know. They're not aware. And the need to ask the next question sometimes, you know, it's just in what. So if you continue to focus on what the client just shared, the last thing that they shared, your question can come from that, right? And the two checks, and I keep sharing this in the class that I, you know, in the ACC batches, is two checks that you have to keep in mind is whenever I'm thinking of a question, is this generating a new awareness for my client or is it taking care of my curiosity? Right? That's the first check that we should do when we are in the moment of silence. Right? So that's something that we have to look at it. And then the second thing is this my need or is this the client's need? And also there are moments, and I'll be very honest, Rahul, there are moments when you know, it gets tricky. What do I ask? And I have asked my clients, where do we go from here? And you know, it's brilliant. They tell us. Or sometimes I ask, what should I not be asking you that I haven't asked you yet? And they tell you because they are so caught up in that moment because what we create for them in that space is very sacred. Being heard completely without judgment, without any interpretation, and without the need to solve is a rare act that does not happen in conversations usually. Yeah. And that brings me to the third channel of listening, which is listening to the coaching space, right? The third channel is to invite us to listen not just to the client, but the space itself. And you know, everyone, for me, coaching is a very spiritual process, right? It's a spiritual process, and therefore I keep saying that it's a sacred space that we are creating. As coaches, we are co-creating an environment where reflection, insight, and transformation happens, which means that are we paying attention more than the words? Are we noticing the energy, the pace, the moments when client lightened up a little bit, there was a moment of ease, and then there are moments of hesitation. Even the silences, sometimes as you know, Devlin is telling, silences can be deafening. And just noticing and presenting it back to the client that what really is happening with you. So that's the listening to the space. So when we are listening to coaching space, it means that we are becoming more aware of the subtle cues and treating them as invitation rather than conclusion. That's very important. So rather than interpreting them, we bring in gentle curiosity. So we might say that I noticed we slowed down just now. What's happening for you in the moment? Or as you were speaking about this opportunity, your energy seemed to change. What did you notice? Okay. And if you know the client is silent and you feel that the client feels the need to be silent, it's okay to say there has been a thoughtful silence here. Would it be useful to stay with it for a moment? In many ways, we are listening to the field of conversation, not just what is being said, but how the conversation itself is unfolding. And that is the space. So the kind of listening requires presence. You know, it asks us to trust that sometimes the most valuable information isn't in the content of the story, but the shifts that occur as the story is being told. And Manu, does that clarify how do we talk about the space?
Yes, yes. I got a gist of it. Probably some of this comes from as someone shared, right, comes a bit from practice, and the others comes from being a little more engaged. As you were giving the examples, I could relate
Yeah,
to.
absolutely.
Thanks. Thank
Sure,
you.
sure. And then a question for all of you to quickly reflect is, how often do you notice and trust the energy, the pace, silence in the conversation before moving to your next question? I mean, are you noticing, and we are all intuitive beings, so are you noticing something intuitively, but we are still going ahead and asking the next question? So how often does that happen for you? Yeah. Okay. So I'm conscious of the time, so I'll move to the fourth channel. And that is the channel where we are listening for emergence, right? And this is where coaching becomes very powerful. We are listening for patterns that is repeated, contradictions sometimes that reveal tension, the strengths of the client that they don't yet recognize, but we do. A new possibility that is beginning to take shape. Yeah. In that moment when you think there is something important here that's just starting to emerge. So rather than jumping to conclusion, do we stay curious and gently invite the client to explore it? Yeah. So for example, I have noticed that every time you describe success, you also mention exhaustion. What are you noticing as you hear yourself say that? Okay, so that's the emergence part of it, emergence bit of it. You will start seeing as you're listening for all the shifts and cues, there will be something. And if you're listening and you are very objectively inquiring around that, something, very strong will emerge for the client in that moment. And that is the fourth channel of listening. Yeah. And what I'm, leaving you with it out of these four channels, just reflect on what is emerging like your greatest strength today, and which one, if strengthened, could deepen the impact of your coaching, right? Let me just quickly bring up my slide. I'm not so much of a slide person, so I hope this is not too abstract for you guys. Okay, so the four channels of listening is listening to the client. What is the client sharing and saying and experiencing? Listening to yourself. What is happening within me as I listen? Listening to the coaching space. What is happening in the space we are creating together? And then listening for emergence. What new patterns, awareness, possibility begins to reveal itself? And sometimes listening for emergence may not happen just in one session. If you're doing a journey with your client, it could be a matter of more than one session. But I'm taking a pause here, inviting and questions if there are any, or anything that you'd like to share. Anything that stayed with you. Anyone? Any questions? Yes, Adil.
This is very interesting to me, listening to the emergence. Would you like to expand on this for my better clarity?
Okay. So listening to the emergence happens, and this is a little bit of bringing theory you also into the play, that there are four levels of listening that we do. One is factual, one we are listening for downloading the information, then it becomes factual. So if I have to explain, I'm a visual person, so let me explain it like that. Okay. You're sitting in a room, okay, and the windows and doors are all closed, and there's somebody outside the room and talking to you. And you would know that whatever they are sharing is something that our brain is interpreting and it's running ahead of. So it's like downloading or reconfirming what we have heard. The moment the person says something new, a new fact or something, it catches our attention. So then we actually probably open the window and, look outside and let that, we listen to it. Then comes the empathetic listening, where we understand the feeling. So we open the door also for the person and we try and understand their feeling. But the fourth is generative listening, which is you go in the field with the person. So both of us are standing side by side and we are actually listening, looking, exploring to that problem together. And that is generative listening. So you're not just empathizing with them, but you are equally involved in the process of that exploration. And that's where emergence happens. So if you are doing a coaching journey, you notice a pattern for the client. You will notice there are places where they avoid going initially. So are we able to notice those contradictions? So typically people will say there's a great opportunity and they should be excited about it, but the body language is not sharing that with you. And we are intuitively feeling. So rather than we interpreting it, can I just observe and present it back? And by that time, our clients are also not noticing what is happening with them. But when we share it, something new emerged for them. That, hey, I should be feeling happy, but I'm not feeling what really is happening. And that is where the emergence happens. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Most welcome. And Samson, when the client is repeating something, it is okay to just check with them that, hey, I heard that you've been talking about this word or this many times. What is happening or what is important about that? Right? So it could be their belief and they are repeating it and they are doing it involuntarily. So the blanket rule is anything that's catching your attention, even if it is a word, a repetition of a pattern, do not interpret it. Just present it back to the client. We don't know their worldview. We have not lived their life, so we don't know where they are coming from. And we will just inquire from them. And it is our duty to inquire because a lot of things that they are doing could be very unconsciously done by the client. Yeah. So I'm quickly bringing another frame. I think all of you are aware of this, but I'm conscious of the time. So I'll just quickly bring a slide around, how do we listen for, and this is an acronym that I use, that listen to the whole person beyond the words, to the emotions, to value, to identity. They bring a lot of identity with them. I am a procrastinator. I am a introvert person. And these are the identities that they carry, the context of who they are being. So, the reflective question is, what is the client really trying to express when you listen to the whole person? Okay. And in the process, invite curiosity. Stay curious rather than being certain or trying to interpret what they are sharing. And the moment we are interpreting, it is for us to just reflect on what assumptions am I making as I'm interpreting this. Okay. Staying present. Absolutely, we can never say that there will be no distraction. Notice distractions and return attention to the client very, very quickly. So the idea is, the journey is how soon do you bring your attention back? And track patterns. Are there recurring themes? Are there contradictions? If they have shared a metaphor, inquire around that metaphor. What keeps showing up? If something is coming up again and again, it's important for us to inquire around that. Okay. Explore what's unsaid. Pay attention to silence, to hesitation, to avoidance. There's something beneath the surface. I'm intuitively feeling. Would you like to explore that? So when we ask them, when we seek their permission, and in seeking permission, we are again passing the choice back to them. It is not for us to choose. It is for them to choose. So what is waiting to be voiced when we invite them? And again, name what you notice. Share observations without judgment. And it is our, responsibility as coach to share observation, because that sometimes create immense awareness for our client. Okay. Taking a pause here, we are almost up the time. And as we come to the end of our time together, I would just leave you with one final reflection. We often say that coaching is about powerful questions. And it is, of course, these are questions, and powerful questions could be very simple questions which helps the client to pause and reflect. But the true power of a question also lies in listening that precedes it. Okay, so today we explored multiple channels that we use to listen. And if you see, the way we interpret and the ICF competency, everything that the competency talks about, the ICF competency is something that we have covered in our conversation today, right? But if you have a thought, if you have a question, I'm very happy to work with you. You can always reach out to me. But I'm leaving you with a question. And I will request all of you to write this question for me. And you can keep this reflection, do this reflection later on. That if your client could anonymously describe what it feels like to be listened by you, what would they say today? Right? And what would you want them to say a year from now on? That's a question that I'm leaving you with. I'm a coach and my job is to help you continue reflection. So I'm leaving you with that question. Okay, let me repeat the question. If your client could anonymously describe what it feels like to be listened by you, what would they say today? Okay. And the follow-up is, and what would you want them to say a year from now on? Yeah. And thank you for being such amazing and participative audience. Thank you for your openness and your reflection and for all the work that you do in creating space where people can think and grow and transform. It's brilliant. Over to you, Aditi, if there are questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Anu. I'm my own Lucas. Thank you so much, Anumeha. It was such a brilliant session. And I loved the participation today. Like everybody was actively listening and everybody was participating. So I hope you had a great time too.
Absolutely. I always love these conversations, Aditi. Thank you so much, guys.
Everybody else also for being such good participants and asking all the brilliant questions.
All right. Okay.
We'll end the session here. Does anybody else have any more questions?
Thank you everyone for such generous comments. Right. It only helps me keep working on myself. All right. You guys can always reach out to me if there's anything that you would want to talk or share. You have CTT support number. They can help you get in touch with me.
CCU units there. We've sent a form. That form can be filled for the CCU units. The link has been reposted in case somebody missed it.
Yeah. Aditi, there's a question around the recording on LMS, right?
So the recordings are available on our YouTube page.
Okay. All right. I'll take your leave, guys. Thank you so much for being such a participative audience. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Anumeha.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Anumeha. Bye.